To some extent, we're using the higher gold price to invest for the extended life of mine and to build in more efficiency and robustness.
Hello, you're watching Proactive. Joining me is Caledonia Mining Chief Executive Mark Learmonth. Mark, very good to speak with you this morning. This was a standout quarter for Caledonia. What were the key factors behind the performance?
Good morning. Yes, it was a good quarter. Two things really. First was higher production, and secondly was the higher gold price. So in the quarter, we produced and sold about 19,000 ounces of gold, which was up from about 17,500 in the first quarter of 2024. And then in terms of gold price, we achieved just under $2,900 an ounce compared to just over 2,000 in the first quarter of 2024. So that translated into gross profit pretty much doubling from $14 million to $27 million. Then in terms of earnings per share, at the bottom of the profit and loss account, earnings per share increased from 7 cents to 45 cents. So yeah, a very good quarter all in all.
Mark, you've committed $41 million in capex this year. What are the main areas of investment?
Yeah, that's split. 34 million is going to be spent at Blanket, and about six or seven is being spent at Bilboes and Motapa. So of the 34 million at Blanket, it's fair to say that a high proportion of that, virtually all of that, is classified as sustaining capex, not expansion capex, which clearly has an effect on all-in sustaining cost per ounce. But that's another issue. And that 34 million is being spent on things like the tailings facility. We're finishing off a very large new tailings facility, which is GISTM compliant, very expensive, which will have a life of about 14 years. We're going to spend about $5 million on that. Also, we've accelerated and we're doing more capital development at the deeper areas of the mine to improve mining flexibility and to set the mine up for longer term production. And then we've got quite a lot of investment in what we broadly call engineering, re-engineering the plant to make it more robust, more reliable. For example, we're going to be spending about $2 million to convert the main winder with a view to reducing its power consumption. So to some extent, we're using the higher gold price to invest for the extended life of mine and to build in more efficiency and robustness.
Could you talk us through the new safety measures you're implementing in 2025?
Yeah, I mean, fundamentally, it comes down to a change in personnel. As you know, we appointed a new chief operating officer just under a year ago, and we've also had some fairly significant changes at the mine level. And as a result of that, we've been able to usher in a range of initiatives. But I think broadly speaking, it comes down to improving short interval controls. So the mine management, so the mine manager himself and the sort of senior management are actually physically underground much more often, being seen, sort of visible felt presence, which has an enormous effect on the way people behave. And also we've adopted a structural approach. So we've put in place various sort of methodologies. The objective being to adopt a proactive approach to identifying potential incidents and accidents so that we can prevent them rather than being reactive. Now, a lot of effort's going into this and some cost as well, and we are seeing encouraging results. But it's a main focus for management.
Could you provide an update on progress with your growth opportunities in Zimbabwe?
Yeah, they break down into Bilboes, Motapa, and then what we classify as sort of near-term, smaller revenue opportunities. At Bilboes, we are revisiting pretty much our entire approach to that project, particularly focused on mining, improving the phasing of the mining, looking at the possible sale of concentrate, either for forever or for a window of, say, 3 years or so, which would again have an effect on the upfront capex, and also reconfiguring the metallurgical plant the primary objective here is to reduce upfront capex, so to reduce the funding requirement, and also to improve the project economics. So there's a lot of work happening there, and we should be in a better position by the end of the year. So that's Bilboes. At Motapa, we are continuing with the exploration there. We were very excited by the results that came out of last year's drilling exercise. We're getting grades of up to 10 grams a ton, so we're spending about $3 million drilling at Motapa. And again, we should have news on that by the end of the year. And then we've got a range of what we classify as near-term, relatively small scale, but very high return revenue opportunities. Things like potentially reprocessing the spent heap leach at Motapa and at Booby, which is on the Bilboes property. And also we believe we've got some near surface oxide opportunities at Motapa as well. Now, the point of those nearer term revenue opportunities is some of those could actually start generating cash within 12 months. And they would then be able to make a significant contribution, certainly at this gold price, to the funding of the bigger Bilboes project. So that's quite exciting.
And your key operational and strategic priorities for the remainder of 2025?
Well, the main focus is maintaining stable production of Blanket. We've seen a return to stability in the past few quarters, and we must keep that going. The grade is a slight area of concern. The grade in the first quarter was a little bit less than we'd expected, but that now appears to have recovered, which should clearly increase production somewhat, and then also go straight to costs. Increasing focus towards looking at cost control of Blanket. The costs are somewhat elevated. We're not particularly comfortable with that, so we'll continue to give that focus. That is quite a slow process to identify those costs and turn them around. As I've mentioned, make further progress on the Bilboes feasibility study, and then by the end of the year, hopefully have a better perspective on what we classify as some of these near-term, relatively small-scale revenue opportunities. So there's quite a lot of activity and hopefully quite a lot of news flow coming over the course of the next sort of 7 months or so by the end of the year.
Hope you'll keep us updated on your progress, Mark. Thank you very much for speaking with us today.
Thank you.
That's Mark Learmonth, the Chief Executive of Caledonia Mining.